Hi, you guys. My name is Natalie Louise. Welcome back to the New Day with Natalie podcast. This is episode 8 of the New Day with Natalie podcast. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking all about limerence and how to stop obsessively thinking about someone. Today's episode is going to be very juicy and incredibly eye-opening for you as well. Before we get into the episode, if you have a very specific relationship issue or situation that you need some advice on or some guidance on, feel free to sign up for one-on-one relationship coaching with me. The link for that is in the show notes down below. We can jump on a Zoom call for 30 minutes and you can spill all of the tea and I'll help you to feel like you have action steps and understand how to navigate your situation, okay? Or if you're interested in email relationship coaching, I also have an option for that down below as well. Without further ado, let's jump into this juicy episode. Tell me if this story sounds like something you've gone through in the past. The first stage of meeting someone for you is typically you meet the person and you immediately feel this attachment to them. Very interested in who they are, you're attracted to them physically. There's just something special about them, okay? You feel like there's a vibe there. Like maybe you go on a date with them and all of a sudden you're like, there's a vibe. Like I know there's some sort of connection. You still just want to get to know them a little bit more. And then you enter into the next stage, which is you're kind of testing the waters. You're pushing their buttons a little bit, right? So you want to see if they like you too. You're thinking about them all the time in your head. And so you're like, if they like me in real life, this could be kind of exciting. But you enjoy playing this movie or story within your head. You might start to poke around and ask a couple of questions to verify if they are single or if they are in a relationship, or maybe questions around like, do they like you or do they like things about you? Because if you get certain answers like they like the way that you look or they like the things that you do with your life, then you can kind of take those pieces, plant them into your story that's within your head and be like, they like me. They're so into me. They want me too. And then all of a sudden this fantasy that you have in your head gets stronger and stronger. And you start to have this like intense emotional connection to this person. Even though you don't totally know them deep down, all you know are a couple of things about them and you basically create this entire story on your own. Okay. This fantasy intensifies as you claim this person as your like special connection person. Okay. And then the next stage is you become mentally obsessed with this person. Like everything you think about is them. They are on your mind 24/7. You literally wake up in the morning, you're thinking about them. And it's not just like the person that they are in real life. It's this fantasy that you've created in your head. So maybe the story goes like you have the house, the dog, the kids. You guys are traveling the world together. Like they treat you like you are a queen or a king. And you guys just have this perfect life and they treat you wonderfully. Yet you don't even know this person at their core. Or perhaps maybe you've only shared a couple of words with them and you only just know what they wear or what they like to eat. And you've created this entire other fantasy just based on those facts alone. You enjoy having this fantasy. You can't function without fueling yourself and getting excited about this fantasy in your head. It's exciting because you don't know if that person truly has feelings for you or not. And if that person one day told you, yeah, I don't like you, or like, I don't have feelings for you, you would be like, what? And then all of a sudden the fantasy might stop because all of a sudden they've given you a fact that's basically going to disrupt your story. And so you just get over it and you're like, well, this isn't fun anymore. So you're over that person. But if it's still like a question, do they like me or not? Do they have the same feelings that I have about them for me? Like, do they like me too? Then all of a sudden it's like, I can keep this story alive because you don't really know how they truly feel. You're looking for subtle signs from them, like, do they like you? Perhaps maybe you overread or overanalyze the text messages that they start to send you, or you're kind of overlooking their body language. Like if they accidentally touch your arm, you're like, oh my God, it's because they like me. Or if they send you a certain text at a certain time of day, you're like, oh, it's because they like me. As you start to become obsessed with this person and obsessed with this fantasy you have in your head, all of a sudden you forget about yourself. yourself. You forget about your own priorities, like your work that you have, the business that you own, or maybe your health. It's like you forget to work out. You forget to, prioritize time with your friends and family. And like you forget who you are at your core because you're so obsessed with this fantasy in your head of making this perfect life happen with this person that you know absolutely nothing about, or you don't even know if they like you or not, okay? You're only thinking about them, and you just experience these really intense mood swings of euphoric highs where it's like life is amazing and they are my person and everything is good. And then you feel these like really depressing lows as well. And it all depends on their behavior and the fantasy that you have within your head. And then you transition into the next stage, which is addiction, where you no longer experience these extreme highs and extreme lows, but instead you just feel this baseline where like you're just obsessed with them and that's it. It's like you don't even know why. You're just checking your social media because you're obsessed, because it fuels your fantasy. It makes you feel good that they are around you and that you are important and wanted. At the end of the day, it's like you literally need this person in order to feel normal or to function in your day-to-day life. Or maybe you just need the fantasy of this person in order to function and have a normal life, okay? If any parts of that story, maybe it's just like one section of that story, you kind of relate to that, or maybe all 4 levels of that story is something you relate to, then you should definitely be familiar with the concept of limerence, okay? Maybe every single romantic relationship that you've ever experienced in your life was never actually based off of love and connection, but actually it was just based on a fantasy. It was all based on limerence. You probably have anxious attachment as well, and that's probably why you watch a lot of my other podcasts and you might have found me on TikTok or YouTube. That's because every time you're in a relationship with someone, you never create connection with that person. You just create limerence around them. You're using a concept or an idea about a person in order to feel good about yourself, right? So like this fantasy you created about your ex or your ex-lover, or maybe your existing partner, or like the partner you want to have, or your crush, or whoever it is, you're using the idea of them to feel good, right? To feel good about yourself. And you feel good by creating this story in your head. So the longer that you're playing this story or this fantasy over in your head, the more you feel good about yourself, right? But the moment that they tear your fantasy apart by saying like, I don't like you, I'm breaking up with you, or like, I hate you or whatever, all of a sudden you're like, no, the person in my fantasy would never tell me that. And so it frustrates you. And so you almost like distance yourself from that person because they're almost making your fantasy not as easy to play through. I personally didn't know that I struggled with the idea of limerence instead of connection for a very long time. And I think limerence can also be confused with the concept of love and connection. Some people use those interchangeably, but they're definitely not the same thing. Limerence is an involuntary state of intense desire for someone marked by intrusive thoughts and a desire for a relationship and reciprocation. I know that's a mouthful. So another way of putting this is you're living in this perpetual state of false hope. Like you're fantasizing about this person and making this amazing dream life in your head, but it's never real. And you're basically giving yourself false hope because this person doesn't even exist. The way that they treat you in your head, they don't do that to you in real life. The kids, the house, all the like physical things that you have in your head and this fantasy that you share with this person are not even real. In reality, you don't own any of those things. In fact, the person that you're fantasizing about, they don't even exist at all, okay? It's like you take one person in real life and you put on like rose-colored glasses and you're looking at them like, oh my God, they love me. They treat me like I'm an amazing person. I'm a king or queen. And I feel so good to be around them. And you take the glasses off and it's like, you barely have a connection. They don't even know your middle name. You don't know anything about them. But for some reason, like you make them seem like they're some sort of God, okay? It's basically like having a relationship with someone that you don't even have a relationship with, okay? And so you're probably like, well, I don't have a limerence with anyone. Like, no, like everyone I've dated is someone I've dated in real life or am dating, right? Well, the thing is, you can still have limerence around someone that you're currently dating right now. In order to have limerence around someone, someone, it typically involves two people, right? So the first person is the person who desires, all right? And that's considered the limerent. Second person is the desired person. And this is also called the limerent object, all right? In psychology, it's also called the LO for short, okay? So you have the person that wants and then the person that's wanted by the person that wants, essentially. If the limerent object has not confessed their love or rejected the limerent or the person that wants you in their fantasy, then there's some level of uncertainty. Like, do they like me? Do they not like me? Do they want to have this life with me? Do they want to have kids? Like, what's going on? And so the story can basically go two ways because there is uncertainty, right? So the first way that the story could end is the limerent object says, yes, I have feelings for you. I want this life with you. I want the house, the kids, the dog, the everything with you. All right. The other way it could go is the limerent object says, yeah, no, I don't like you. I don't have those feelings for you. I don't want those things with you, right? So those are the two avenues. Limerence, or the concept of limerence, is formed at the core of this uncertainty. Because if there was 100% clear certainty that this person likes you or does not like you, then you could not create a fantasy or this dream in your head where you could live and be happy. You're basically caught in a limbo between unpredictability and hope. It's like you're always hoping that they will come around and be that person, but you don't really know. So it's unpredictable what they're going to do, and it's exciting. Like, you live off that excitement. So the more your fantasy becomes a reality, the less limerence you feel towards the limerent object or the LO. Another way of putting this as well is like you're just after the chase, and the moment the person says, yeah, I like you, you're like, I'm not interested anymore. And that's because your fantasy can't live out anymore because your limerent object is like, no, you can't dream about me because that's like, no, I don't want to do that. Or you don't feel comfortable dreaming about someone or fantasizing about someone if they literally just told you, I don't like you. If you're in a relationship with someone and you have limerence around your existing partner, okay, you might notice that you get into more fights with them. And that's because they're acting in a way that is not like your fantasy version of them, okay? So you could be dating someone and in your head, you're like, they treat me like a queen. They always take me out to these fancy restaurants. They always they always buy me all these nice gifts. They always are like asking how my day is. Like, they're just amazing. But then in real life, your existing partner doesn't do any of that. Like, they take you to McDonald's, they never buy you gifts, and they always talk about their day and they don't ask you about yours. So you're like, why don't you ask me about my day? Why don't you take me to nice restaurants? And they're like, I never have. Like, what are you talking about? And it's frustrating for you because it's like, that is your fantasy. And so sometimes like you can't even pull apart the fantasy version of them from the real life version of them because it has that limerence like shield around your eyes. Does that make sense? The more attached you are to the idea of this like fantasy version of your partner or of your lover or your crush or your ex or whoever it is, then you will probably prefer the fantasy version of them over the real version of them, which makes for a very unhealthy relationship. Or it creates this dynamic where you never even loved them. You never even had connection with them because you only have connection with this fantasy version of them. Your goal as the limerent, the person that's very obsessed with someone, is to uncover if the limerent object or the person that you want to be obsessed with you too has reciprocal feelings for you. It's kind of like that is the uncertainty. Do they like you or do they not like you? You focus all of your mental energy on the passion, and you feel a lot of anxious thoughts as well, such as like, does this person like me? Do they want me? And as those anxious thoughts flow through your mind, you play the fantasy in your head to calm yourself down because you're like, well, of course they like me because we have the house, the dog, the kids, the everything in your head, right? Or like, of course they're watching my story because they're obsessed with me, because they love me, because they want me. You tell yourself these things to calm yourself down. And so if this desire of wanting you back is not reciprocated, all of a sudden you're sad, you're frustrated, you feel this level of misery in your life, and you're like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so sad and stuff after like this mental breakup, even though you never actually dated this person? Or maybe if you did date this person and you go through a breakup and you didn't even know them, it's like you only dated for for 3 months or a couple of weeks, it's because you had an intense fantasy with this person. You dated another version of them in your head. It was never the real version of them. Does that make sense? So here are some symptoms of limerence. So if you're like, have I done this to someone before? Like, do I have limerence around someone? Like, let's find out right now, okay? If you have limerence around someone, you typically have this intense longing for the limerent object or your crush or ex or whoever you want to want you back. You have this intense longing for that person to have the same feelings for you. You want them to want you back in the extreme way that you also want them. Like, it's like this intense romantic movie in your head, and you want them to come running to you and like, I want you, I messed up, or just like admit that they have feelings for you, okay? Another thing is you can never really find faults in them. Like, there's nothing really wrong with them to you. Like, you put them on a pedestal and you're like, they are amazing. I love everything about them. Granted, when you are in a relationship with someone, you typically do love everything about your partner. Obviously, you know that they have faults, but the difference between limerence and then actually being in love with someone is that you know they have faults, but you love them anyway. With limerence, it's like you don't even see their faults. You love everything about them and there's nothing wrong with them. Like, they're literally perfect to you. If you have limerence, another symptom is you will experience mood swings. So you will feel like you have never been happier in your life. Like, you're building this really intense connection with someone, although there is no connection at all, because in order to build connection with someone, you need to truly listen to them. You need to know where they are coming from. You need to listen to the words that are coming out of their mouth, not creating a story in your head instead of listening to them, not creating this like alternative persona of this person. Instead, be with them in the present moment, okay? That's why I said, like, you probably have never really had connection or love with anyone because you always are resorting to this fantasy version of them instead. The mood swing is like you're super happy. You've never built this connection with anyone. You feel so good connection with anyone. And then all of a sudden you start to feel like their attention is fading and they're pulling away and you get like really, really depressed. It's like severe depression, okay? And you're like, what's wrong? Like, why are they acting this way? And it freaks you out, okay? So when that happens, you typically play the fantasy in your head again. Everything is perfect in your head, or you start to like find reasons why they could be acting different and you start freaking out. That's when your anxious attachment is probably triggered. And when the limerence phase, as it does, or if it does, you feel really, really pathetic and sad inside, okay? And you feel very empty, and it's just like, I was feeling so good, so happy, I was so confident, and now all of a sudden I feel sad. And the reason why you feel sad and empty is because the limerent object might have told you something that made you feel like your fantasy story is done. It's gone, right? Maybe you guys broke up and they're like, I never want you back, or something that made you angry about this person. And as a result, the story just doesn't make sense anymore. So now you have to find a new person to get excited about in order to feel this high again. If your mood is so fragile because you depend on the LO's perception of you and their level of admiration of you. So if they don't like you in real life, or they're not talking to you as much, or they're pulling away, you're like, why don't they like me? Like, what's going on? And because they're acting in that way, you feel like your fantasy story doesn't make sense anymore, because if they're pulling away from you in real life, then how can you still have this fantasy in your head? Your fantasy story starts to fall apart. You get really depressed and sad, and then you just like give up on the story. It's like, you know, whenever you hang out with your friends or your girlfriends or something, and all of a sudden everyone's like, give me the tea, like what's new? It's like you always have some sort of tea or gossip to talk about, right? There's always some sort of like guy or girl update, just like something you need to talk about. And when you don't, when there's no updates, it's like, I'm not dating anyone, I didn't have a fling with anyone. All of a sudden, like, you feel empty. You feel like, what just happened? Like, I don't know if you've ever gotten to that point, but I know I have. And it's like, well, what do you talk about then? And like, sure, you might have goals or like, you know, projects you're working on, but it's like, if there's no one that you're getting excited about or dating or like crushing on, then what's the point, sort of? Like, what's the point of this gossip? Like, what's the point of hanging out with your girls or like guys or whatever? What's happening is you don't have a limerent object, or you might be in that low point of the mood swing where you're depressed and you're like, I need someone to fantasize about. So you might go on dates with people, you might go out to a club, or you might just meet new people, or maybe someone at the gym that you're like, oh, I feel like there's like this intense like connection between us. And then all of a sudden you use that person as your fantasy. So it's like you go to the gym and you see this person, you're like, oh, they like me. And then you go home and you start fantasizing like, well, what if they asked me out? What if they were like super into me? You know what? They are super into me. And then you start playing the story in your head of like, they are so into me. We are going to get married. They are going to ask me out. It's going to happen soon. And so then you live off of that story. And then the moment that person in the gym like walks in with another girl, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, they are already dating someone else and they like hate you. Then it's like, wait, my fantasy doesn't make sense anymore because they're dating someone else and they don't like me. And then all of a sudden, that's it. Like your fantasy of that person stops. You might feel really sad and depressed, and it's like you went through a breakup, but you didn't even date the person. It was all in your head. That's what limerence is. And so then what you do when you hang out with your girlfriends or your friends or family or whatever, and you're giving them the updates, you're like, yeah, there was this really cute guy in the gym, and like, you know, he was totally checking me out and like things were really good. And that was your update at one point in time. But then all of a sudden it's like, what do you talk about? Like that person seeing someone else, like why even bring that up? Like, I don't know. And then you go to a coffee shop and you order a coffee or a matcha or whatever you want. And then you see someone in the coffee shop that's really attractive and you're like, damn, that person's really cute. And then your mind starts going off. Well, I like that shirt on him. Well, what if like I bought him that shirt and like he buys me all these really nice presents and like we're so in love with each other and we do all this like really hot stuff together, and like your mind just goes off, and then maybe it's like you guys get married in your head, or like I don't know what your vision would be, but it's like then you just go off and then you feel okay again. You feel like I'm okay because I'm mentally dating someone. And that's the whole thing. It's like this mental, you're in another level of dating. It's like you don't even know the person sitting in the coffee shop. You know nothing about him. All you know is that he's sitting there and that you like his shirt. But you've created this entire story in your head that like you guys are together, and it's really amazing. Okay. So that's what limerence looks like on the surface. Like when you see a random person and like you're just trying to fill a void, and we'll talk about the psychology behind why you do this, but it also can happen, like I said, if you're in a relationship with someone. And this is almost like when you have anxious attachment, you only know so much about a person. Like you're afraid to dig deep. You're afraid to ask these really intense questions to truly understand someone and feel connected and get that connection, like I mentioned. Because if you ask something that disrespects someone, or you feel like if you ask something to someone, it might offend them, they don't want to share something with you, they're going to pull away and reject you because you asked an offensive question. Like that's your fear. So you decide to be a people pleaser or just show up at the bare minimum surface level. And when you show up to a relationship at the surface level and you barely listen to this person and you're barely connected to this person, you basically use their like energy of just being with them and dating them. But just like in reality, you're just in their energy. You use that to fuel your fantasy. So it's like you see them a couple times a week, but then you start freaking out because you're like, well, why don't their texts line up with the story I have in my head? Why doesn't the text that they send me line up with the way that they are treating me in real life? Why aren't they buying gifts like they do in my head? And then all of a sudden it's like that entire concept of them in real life doesn't even line up with this fantasy version of them. So when they start pulling away from you and you get really anxious, because that's what happens in an anxious avoidant relationship, the avoidance pulling away because they have too much of you and they need their independence, but you want more of them because you thrive off of their energy. When they start pulling away, you freak out. It's one of your greatest fears is abandonment. So what you do is create a fantasy in your head to calm yourself down. That's one of your coping mechanisms. That's when you put the limerence around this person because there is no connection. You don't even know them at their core. You just know the fantasy version of them. And so that's the mood swing that you're experiencing. It's like you feel good in your fantasy, but then when you're actually with them and they don't act the way that you want them to, you get really depressed. And then you're afraid to say, why are you acting this way? And if you do ask them that, they're going to be like, well, what do you mean? This is how I always act around you. By the way, I'm going to break up with you because I don't want to do this anymore. It's like they're asking for you to break up with them, but the avoidant's also afraid to break it off too. Because both people in that relationship, the anxious avoidant relationship, are terrified of rejection and abandonment. And they would much rather just not be the one that ends it. And so it's always a pickle being in one of those relationships. I consider it a trap. And if you want to learn more about the psychology behind the anxious avoidant trap, listen to episode 1. So another symptom that you might have if you have limerence around someone is you're constantly stalking their social media. You get bored and then all of a sudden you open up your phone and you start checking their social media, and it's like every 20 to 30 minutes, give or take. And you know there's no new updates, but like just checking their social media makes you feel comfortable and calm. And your hope is that you'll find some sort of evidence on their profile that will validate or confirm that they like you and that they want to be with you and that your fantasy is real, and that because they posted a picture or a photo to their story saying like, I miss my girl, or like I'm sad and lonely, all of a sudden you're going to be like, that's because they want me. And so you're constantly looking for evidence that they want you or they have the same feelings for you. Okay, that's if you're not dating the person. If you are dating the person, you're still looking for them to validate the fact that they want you. Because if you're anxiously attached, you never feel secure in the relationship. You're constantly like, can you tell me that you like me? Can you touch me? Can you do this to me? Like, because you want to know that they want you back all the time, because you're afraid they're going to let go randomly. That's why you stalk, because that also gives you comfort. Another symptom of limerence is you're driving past their house or locations that you guys frequent together or that you know that they frequent. And so your hope is that maybe you'll run into them, or maybe they'll notice that you're there. Like at like their favorite coffee shop, you just show up and you're like, oh, I didn't know that you go here too. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's just exciting to you, because the unpredictability of, do they really want me to? Do they want to have this life with me that I am living in my head? And if there's any sort of hope that you can hold on to, you will continue the limerence and the fantasies in your head. And that's all you need to hold on. Another symptom is you are very, very, very aware of your appearance when you're around them. Okay. So if like you're going from one limerent object to the next, like you feel like you had a breakup in your head with someone, like for example, the guy in the gym that all of a sudden walks in with another girl and you've been fantasizing about him for weeks. Like, oh my God, he loves me. He's so into me. But you realize like he has a girlfriend or he's married or something. So you're like, all right, that fantasy's over. So after that happens, you're like, well, I am going to really pay attention to my appearance, because you think that at any moment in time, someone can fall in love with you, or you can meet someone that could be your new limerent object, the person that you would want you back. It's like you just want someone to want you at your core. So you might as well look really good, because you never know when it can happen. Another symptom of limerence is you are constantly dreaming about the person that you want to want you back. Okay, so the limerent object. You dream about them. Maybe it's like your existing limerent object, or maybe it's a past limerent object. So maybe it's like an ex that you had in the past where like you couldn't stop thinking about them, which is basically limerence. And you dream about them sometimes, and it could be like sexual dreams. It could be just like the happy fantasy of like you guys you still have the kids and the dog in the house with this person, and like you still live in that fantasy, because it just feels good to play that over instead of facing reality that like they left you, or that you never even got to know them. You don't even know them at all, but it just feels good to play that movie in your head. And finally, the last symptom is you see them in real life all the time, okay? And when you do that, you feel really shy around them, or you just fear that like they won't like you, or they're gonna say something mean to you. So you kind of like keep a distance, but you're just shy. Okay, so quick story on this one. I remember when I was in high school, I had like the biggest crush on this guy in my chemistry class of all classes, okay? And he sat right next to me, and I thought he was so attractive, so cute, and I had the biggest crush on him. Now, what I didn't know was that I put limerence around him, okay? So what that basically meant was I barely knew who he was. I knew where he worked. He worked at Starbucks. And I knew that he was like very nice to me, like whenever, you know, we were in class together. But we literally exchanged maybe like a total of 10 words to each other in each class. And that was it. Like, I did not know anything about him, and we literally never talked to each other, but we sat right next to each other in chemistry class. So in my head, that's all I needed to create this story where he was super into me. He was super shy, but actually really liked me. And in my head, I took that piece of information and I flew with it. I was like, well, one day he's going to gain the courage to ask me out and get my number. And then all of a sudden, like, we're going to date and it's going to be really amazing. Because because he works at Starbucks, in my head, I was like, well, after school, like I'll go over to his house and I'll know his parents. And when he comes home from work, he'll bring me like a Frappuccino and a cake pop and it's going to be amazing. And like I went off, like the level of detail in my fantasy was like outrageous. Okay. But again, I didn't even know this guy like at all. And then in class, when he would talk to other girls, it would make me mad because in my head, it felt like we were almost dating or it felt like he was cheating. And so the fantasy started to fall apart because I'm like, well, why are you talking to other people? Like, this doesn't make sense. And so that's when the fantasy would die and I would get sad and depressed. I would literally be like moody. I was like, oh, I'm having a bad day. No wonder I was having a bad day. Like, you know, the guy in my dreams was basically cheating on me, right? My fantasy was falling apart. And then other days, like one day he actually did ask for my number. It was like literally for a project for school. But I was like, he's asking for my number. I used that piece of information or evidence, if you will, towards my fantasy. I was like, he's asking for my number because he likes me. And so that was all I wanted. It was a little bit of unpredictability, right? And then a little bit of hope. And those things mixed together fueled my fantasy of this guy, all right? And it fueled the limerence that I had around him. There was absolutely zero connection to this guy. Like, we shared no connection. He knew nothing about me. I knew nothing about him. Also, I was very aware of my appearance and I would get very shy and nervous around him. I remember before going into chemistry class, I'd stop in the bathroom to straight up like touch up my makeup and make sure like I looked good before walking into class. And also some of my friends knew I had a big crush on him in that class. So I would just ask them to like talk to me or just make me look good in that class. But for some reason, I just couldn't start conversation with him because I was so nervous around him. I was so infatuated with this idea that like we were it. And if I said one word, it would be the wrong word and then he would just not even want to talk to me. But we weren't even talking in real life anyway. So it's like, it almost was hard to decipher between this like fantasy version of him and then real life. I mean, I did get an A in the class. So, I mean, I was still like in reality, but I was so into this fantasy version. The difference between a crush and limerence is with a crush, you actually want to build connection with that person. You want to get to know them on a deeper level. And with limerence, it's just like surface level. Like you're only into this fake version of them in order to feel good. That's the emotional masturbation that I was talking about. Like you just are obsessed with the feeling that they give to you by just being with them in this fantasy in your head, okay? All right, so let's talk about the psychology behind limerence, okay? The limerent, or the person that wants so deeply for someone to want them back, okay, they experience some sort of neglect in their past, okay, and or experience a lot of instability as well. This could have been in their childhood or in early relationships, okay? And so they believe that the limerent object that they choose, or the person they want to like them back, they believe that this person has the ability to heal their wound, okay? Just by being in their energy, just by soaking up their affection, and just by admiring their perfect exterior. They believe the limerent object has the ability to heal. Because of that, they start to like idolize that person in a very extreme way, because it's almost like if they are my healer and no one else can, like I better take care of this person in my head. I'm going to idolize them because they are the only one that can save me. It's like, imagine you have this like intense disease and there's only one doctor that can save you. And so you idolize this doctor because it's like no one else can do what this doctor can do for you. So in reality, the limerent is actually creating instability in their lives again, because in their head, they believe that the LO, or the person that they're obsessed with, loves them, right? And will save them. But in reality, that person that they're obsessed with, they don't even know who they are. They don't even want a relationship with you. So as a result, it's like you're creating an instability, all right? Going back to my example, it's like imagine like you think that this doctor is the only one that can save you. And finally, like you travel all this way to see the doctor and the doctor is like, I retired. Like I'm done. Like I don't do any of that anymore. I can't help you. And you're like, what do you mean? Like, I came all this way. I put all of my eggs in one basket. I put all of my money to this plane ticket and you can't save me. And the doctor's like, nope, no can do. I'm retired. I'm done. And you might even learn the doctor was in an accident a couple years ago and lost his arms. So like he physically can't even do surgery and he's retired. So he definitely can't help you out. Imagine what sort of instability you would feel if the doctor you were praying that could help you all of a sudden doesn't even have arms. How is a doctor without arms supposed to do an operation on you? So now all of a sudden your world is completely unstable because you're like, well, who's going to help me now? And then you start spiraling into like, I'm going to die. I'm never going to heal. All these things are bad. And so you feel the instability. But because in your head, you thought that this person, this doctor was the only one that could save you, you felt some sort of peace. You felt there was hope. You were holding on to the unpredictability, like maybe it would work, right? Same thing with limerence, all right? As long as the limerent object is standing on a pedestal within your head, there is always this like invisible pursuit to try to win them, right? Or to fantasize about already having them. So if you are dating someone, you can still put them on a pedestal and like idolize them and be like, they are gonna fall so much in love with me, right? Because if you're dating someone, you're not married to them. So you can be like, they're so in love with me. They're gonna propose like, oh my God, they want me. But it's like, you don't know that. That's not reality, right? Unless they verbatim told you like, I love you, I want to marry you, and there's a ring on the finger, you have no idea what they are thinking. You can't read their minds. This is a false persona of the person that you are dating, or a false persona of the person that you have a mega crush on, which is your obsession, which is the limerence around the person. So this is a quote from the Painted Brush blog. The neurochemical basis of limerence is a fascinating interplay of dopamine, serotonin, and neuroamphetamine. These neurotransmitters team up to create an intense cocktail of attraction, obsession, and heightened energy. It's like the brain's way of saying, hey there, this person is special, pay attention. It's a rush of almost having, all right? It's the waiting of love. That's basically what's going on in your head. That's why you feel like you are so addicted to this person and so obsessed. It's because it's that neurotransmitter cocktail that's being created in your head and you cannot get away from it. Also, people that struggle with limerence a lot also might have had a very difficult childhood, like I mentioned, okay? So those who never really had their emotional needs met are definitely prone to limerence. So they are drawn to the idea of imagining this parallel reality, which is like a whole new world from their normal reality, where fantasies and all of their dreams and all of the good feelings are a place that they can just escape to because their existing reality is too painful. The fantasies are considered a safe outlet or a safe environment when compared to the reality that they face that is not safe. So when something triggers that dynamic of like a safe fantasy and a not safe reality, it's like opening a portal to a safe fantasy world, okay? And as destructive as that is, where it's like you're just mentally escaping, you actually learn to love it because it's like, I don't want to face reality. I'd rather just live in my fantasy world, okay? So that's why people tend to put limerence around people as well. Now let's talk about how limerence even begins, now that we understand the psychology. Say you see someone in your life that you find attractive and you start to think about them all the time and obsessively, okay? Just thinking about this person would give you extreme pleasure. You can physically feel your heart racing, you are sweating like crazy, or you experience this feeling of being very weak around them, like you're not really the true version of you when you see the limerent object, okay? Your brain is trying to fill a void in your life by using a limerent object, okay? Another story, I remember going on a date with this one guy a couple years back. Immediately on that date, I was attracted to him, okay? He was very confident, he had a ton of friends, and he recently quit his like soul-sucking finance job, and he was doing something that he absolutely loved to do. He was very self-reliant and autonomous, and I just really admired all the qualities that he had, okay? Immediately, we did start to like date, if you will, or see each other. I put him on a pedestal, okay? And I did that because I thought that he was just so incredible. And when I was with him, I wanted those qualities for myself. And because I was with him like frequently in the beginning, I felt like his qualities were my qualities, okay? And so I would start to fantasize us having this like perfect life and me also quitting my finance job and me also being confident and having friends and doing all those things, okay? And so I still had him on a pedestal, and I felt like he was always looking out for me as well because he was one step ahead of me. He already quit the job. He already had his friends. He was very, very confident. And so he was one step ahead. I felt protected. I felt safe, and it just was like a beautiful dynamic. And so that's what really kept the fantasy alive. In reality, he really didn't take care of me or protect me. Like, he took me out to nice dates and like we hung out a couple of times. But beyond that, like the entire romantic connection I thought we had was all in my head. Okay. So when he dumped me or just said like, I don't want to see you anymore, I felt like I was so alone again. I was like, great, now I have to do everything over on my own. This is terrible. And in my head, I thought that we were going to like travel the world together and like do all these things. And in reality, like we never even talked about that, which is ironic. It was all limerence. I was like, you know what? Now I'm going to have to travel by myself. I'm going to have to make my own friends. I'm going to have to quit my job. No one's going to like, pep me up. I'm just going to have to do it all by myself. And I just felt this wave of like fear. I always told myself like after the breakup, well, maybe if I was more successful or had more money or had more friends, then he would like me. And so I thought like having physical items or like new qualities about me would all of a sudden make me a qualified partner for him, right? But the thing is, he never saw the true me, the true and real, authentic, raw version of me, because I was afraid to expose that side of me. In fact, with all of my past relationships, besides my existing relationship, I have never showed that true side of me, maybe like little parts of it, but I've always been afraid to show that because it's just uncomfortable to show the real me and to share my true fears. I felt more comfortable making excuses about the breakup. Like, well, if I was more this, or if I changed who I was there, then all of a sudden it would work out, right? But in reality, there really was no connection ever. Sometimes it just feels good to put yourself in this like victim position and think that like you're absolutely perfect and you're an amazing, loving, caring partner, and that like the person you were dating and broke up with you, like they are actually the problem. And, if they just looked at you in a different way, then maybe it would all work out. But in reality, true connection and true love means that you're showing up for your partner in the most genuine and authentic way. And you just want to be with them and to feel their energy and know who they are, right? Like you give as much as you take. You care about them, you listen to them, and you love them inside and out, okay? In reality, no one is a bad person. Not your ex, not the person that you're really frustrated at, the person that like broke up with you in your head. No one is a bad person, okay? Everyone is just showing up in a different way and is at a different stage of their life. And so the way that you see them is just where you are at, or it's just the shades that you're looking through, okay? Okay, so now let's talk about the difference between limerence versus love, because this might be helpful for you to understand. Limerence is when you are attracted or obsessed with the idea of someone in your head. You think about this person all the time. You're prioritizing this person over your life, your work, your friends, your health, like everything, okay? And you are uncertain as well if this person wants you back or likes you in the same way back, all right? You don't really care about this person's well-being. It's all like independent. Like you're living in your head and you just enjoy obsessing over this person instead of truly caring about them, all right? There's just like this mental obsession over them. Again, you don't really want to have sex, get married, have kids in real life. It's more just like fun to live in this fantasy within your head, okay? Love, on the other hand, means your partner plays a very important role in your life and you care about their well-being, okay? You give them affection, you show up for them all the time, you feel calm, relaxed, secure within their energy, right? There's clear communication that you're utilizing as well. Both you and your partner are real and both have flaws. Like, they are not perfect and you are not perfect, but that is okay, all right? That is real connection. That is love. And that only happens when limerence is not in the equation at all. There cannot be any ounce of limerence within your relationship in order for you to feel connection and to feel love, okay? Whenever you think about dating apps in modern day dating in 2024, you think about hookups, right? And the thing is, that also has a lot of limerence around it because many people are just having physical sex for the pleasure, right? Just because it feels good. That's like the emotional masturbation part and like literal masturbation. You're not having sex to build a deeper connection with that person. You don't even want to know anything about that person. You just want to have sex and then get out, right? If you are truly in love with someone, you want to know them on a deeper level. You want to know their fears. You want to know how you can show up for them. It's a full-bodied experience. But the problem with dating these days is it's nothing from that. It's the furthest thing from a fully connection experience, right? That means you, like, every time you have sex with someone and you're just doing it for, you just want to feel something, you just want to feel good or get the pleasure out of it, that is because you have put limerence around that person that you're having sex with. Okay? So to finish this episode, I want to talk about how to stop limerence. If anything I've said in this episode has really opened your eyes or just like made you a little bit more aware, like, dang, I think I might have put limerence around some people in the past, this one's for you, okay? In order to stop limerence, you have to be completely aware of the triggers and cues that your body is telling you, okay? So your body is typically going to tense up and maybe feel anxious or just like give you a sense of pain if you are not truly in love or feeling secure with someone, okay? That's because your body's like, do not show your heart or show your true self to anyone, right? It's like your own physical boundary that you're putting in place or a wall around you. Now, when you are in love and you are having sex because of the connection, you can feel very relaxed, you can feel very calm. That's probably why you can reach a peak, if you know what I mean, because you are calm and you feel secure and you can do your thing. Okay, so this is how to stop limerence. The first thing you can do is tell people or tell the person that you like exactly how much you appreciate them in the moment that you feel it, or how much you love them in the exact moment that you have that emotion towards them, okay? Not when you're by yourself and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I want to think about this person. Like, I just like the way that they said that to me. Oh my God, I really like them. Because when you start to play that story in your head when you're not by them, all of a sudden that's when the fantasy grows. And that's when you start to enjoy the fantasy more than the real life version of them. So if you say it in the moment, like, I love you because you just did this for me, or I just love being with you, all of a sudden it's like you just made that reality, right? You just created an expectation and you shared it with your partner, and now they are like, yes, I agree, or I feel the same way, and you just created something in reality, okay? It's not in your head. It's not limerence. It's true connection, because all of a sudden they might have shared something about you that's raw and authentic, okay? Another thing you can do to stop limerence is practice the opposite of neglect, okay? That means you're taking care of yourself. You are putting yourself first. You are prioritizing you, okay? And you are releasing anything that is not meant for you, all right? I say this a lot with how to heal after going through a breakup, but it's critical to know what you need in order to feel happy, safe, loved, and feel like you are worth something. And if you have to lean on someone else in order to feel any of those things, that's when you know you're not standing on your own 2 feet. And so what can you do to make yourself feel those things? And then do that for you. Show up for you. All right. And the last thing I'll tell you is to retrain your subconscious. Okay. This basically means you need to learn how to resist the urge to experience the fantasies and instead create new goals for yourself. Right now, your subconscious mind is just working overtime without you even saying anything, thinking about this fantasy person, this fantasy life that you have that's so perfect, right? So you need to resist the urge to live in that fantasy. You need to resist the urge to experience all the good things that that fantasy comes with, and instead create yourself new goals. So the way you do that is consciously choose your new goals, consciously practice those goals repetitively and with emotion. Over time, your subconscious will remember the things you chose to do consciously and then do those automatically. So for example, if you want to stop thinking about the person you're obsessed with, think of a project you're excited about. Think about maybe you're trying to get into real estate and you want to invest in a property. So think about like, oh, what book do I need to read? Or I need to call my realtor, or like, what are the steps you need to take before you buy the property? And so whenever you think about your ex or the person you're obsessed with, or your partner or the person at the gym, all of a sudden you think about, oh my God, that house, or how much money I'm going to make, or like the difference I'm going to make in my family's life, or whatever it is. And then you immediately go to the project of the house. And over time, you'll stop thinking about that fantasy and instead you'll start thinking about the investment you're going to make in real estate. And you basically convince yourself it's not good to think about that. It's more important to think about this because you're consciously choosing that thought. Emotion and repetition is how you retrain your subconscious mind. If this episode was really powerful for you and really hit you in the right way and you're like, oh my God, I have limerence. Oh my God, I think I have anxious attachment too, because typically if you feel limerence around someone, it's because you have anxious attachment. So if you are interested in transforming your anxious attachment into a secure attachment style, and you're like, I want to get rid of the limerence, I want to get rid of all that, I want to have a secure, happy, fulfilling relationship, I want to understand why I keep attracting the wrong partner, why I keep fantasizing about certain people, I just want to feel loved and I want to feel the reciprocation and I don't want to be addicted to the chase. I want to just be caught and be happy, and that's it. All right, then I would invite you to sign up for my 90-day accelerator program called Going from Anxiously Attached to Securely Attached. During these 90 days, we will work together closely to understand your learned habits. We will work on boosting your self-confidence, which will help you to feel free and not feel attached to certain people or relationships, okay? I will guide you in developing a more secure attachment style to build long-lasting, loving relationships, whether that's with your ex, a previous partner, or someone brand new, okay? So if you're interested in that program, please feel free to apply down below. And just remember, there are new episodes to the New Day with Natalie podcast every single Sunday. Thank you guys for tuning in this week, and please check out my YouTube channel and TikTok under the name Natalie Louise for more content on a day-to-day basis, okay? I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one, okay? Bye, guys.